challenge your view of those who come before the court today. What do you think of? Is it their family makeup, their income, even their dress sense? We can rely so readily on stereotypes derived from reality TV and mainstream media that we actually ask, do they deserve to be fairly represented by creating that us and them culture? And for those who represent them, can they maintain their profession with independence and integrity? Imagine if I told you that due to that same societal prejudice and stereotypes, that my personal circumstances would have resigned me to the same fate. Yet, when I say I'm a barrister, I'm somehow promoted up the social ranks, unfortunately unbeknownst to my bank account. Growing up, I was always told to keep those cards close to my chest from those who would wish to take advantage of any perceived vulnerabilities that I may have. Because we're all dealt our hand to play in life, from very early on. For some of us, those cards can represent a position of privilege, and for others, those cards feel as if they've been dealt a bad hand, through no fault of their own. And despite this, we all have the opportunity and the right to have the seat at the table. And on this very table, because you know where I'm going with this, is the deck of life. Face down, each card you pick up, uncertain and unpredictable. Now, you may think this deck of life can contain all the weighted milestones in your life. Settling down, getting a dog, maybe finding your dream career. What you may not expect to find is a card saying that you've been charged with a criminal offence, or that your relationship's broken down, or that even your right to live and work in this country has been refused. Today, I want to question whether access to justice is truly accessible, both for those in the profession and those represented by it. Now, we take for granted that we'll never have to face a lawyer or even a courtroom, so I do apologise for any of you watching. So we never put money aside to fund that representation when those cards are stacked against us. Just like our reliance on the NHS, it's a service that many deem that they're entitled to have, which makes sense. It is your fundamental human right, after all, for the right to fair trial and access to justice. And it can be difficult when living hand to mouth to fund such representation. And this is where legal aid steps in, that governmental piggy bank with the theoretical aim to provide that financial support to those who need it. But you can't have legal without some terms and conditions, can you? For example, despite how small your income or savings may be, if it exceeds the threshold, you may not be able to avail of it. And equally, the type and merit of your case may also restrict you from such aid as well. I've sat in cases where clients are appealing a decision that has cut their income support to live on each week, or have denied them that benefit entirely. Since it changed the personal independence payment in 2017, 40% of those decisions have gone on to an appeal. And despite struggling with physical and mental disability, they're left with no option but to advocate for themselves as they're being challenged in a very challenging environment, and an unfamiliar environment at that. And as a result of this, they're not the only ones that have felt that they simply need to read the instruction manual and go it alone. A recent report by University of Ulster found that between 2012 and 2017, 5,000 people are before the family and civil courts each year, unrepresented. And whilst justice seeks to keep budgets low and resolve issues outside of the court, it merely acts as a scenic route back before it. It prolongs their experience, creates further delay, and inevitably further expense to the public purse. But it's a client that suffers, who simply wants to be heard. And in practice, I've seen this happen where there's an opportunity for an agreed way forward, but clients see it simply as winners and losers, and all personal matters put to the mercy of the court to decide on. And I cannot stress enough how it cannot be overvalued, the importance of legal advice. Working alongside solicitors, as barristers, we know the law, we can adapt to its changes and the judge's response to it. It's highly likely we may know the representative for the other side as well. Small world and all that. But it's important that whether you feel that you're not guilty due to an innocent mistake, or worse, plead guilty for matters to simply go away, you need someone there on your side that can provide you the best options for your case, and your case alone, without any fear or favour. And a reality where that presence is not felt in the court system doesn't require a lot of imagination. In 2015, despite 18 months of negotiations, it was only when barristers actually removed themselves from jury trials in Crown Court for nearly 9 months that their presence was truly felt, or rather, missed. Thankfully, matters were mediated and our fees for now have been maintained. But before you ask, no, this wasn't us fat cats seeking to be paid more than we're worth. We were simply trying to keep the profession worthwhile. The cuts proposed sought to halve our fees in some cases. Now, dividing that over the hours a barrister would spend on a case, say if it were to go to trial, was just not sustainable. And just due to this current pandemic and the pressures on the NHS can be seen, it can be difficult to remember this, but we, in contrast, aren't government funded. The price we pay for an independent bar means we are and have to be self-sufficient. But how can we support one another if we cannot support ourselves? And the proposed cuts that could have been felt can still be felt quite close to home still. Barristers in England and Wales have felt the decline in access to justice for nearly a decade. In the just small change for Justice Report in 2019, it was found that the justice spend in England and Wales was a mere 39 pence per person per day. Less than what the nation would spend on, say, a cup of coffee every morning, each year. The author of The Secret Barrister rightly asked, how confident would you be of the quality of your representation if you knew that their hourly rate was less than minimum wage? That's right, less. So to put that into perspective, a fully qualified barrister in their horsehair wig and gown making less than a McDonald's employee. And that's due to the fact that we're largely prevented from taking on a second job. And the BBC reported on this issue just in January this year, coupling the cuts with the delays in the court system for up to 4 years, even for low-level, straightforward cases. A civilian rightly responded to all this with, "That's a sentence in itself, babes." And as a member of the Young Bar, I merely stand on the shoulders of the barristers before me that advocated for our profession, for the interests of our clients, and for the maintenance of the rule of law. Yet the cards continue to be stacked against us, even in present day, and it could have serious implications, not only for the independence of the bar, the independence of the court system, and the public confidence in it. And of course, speaking of COVID again, sorry, but the impact of it has been quite serious on the profession, with many of those having circumstances that are quite like the clients they represent. They're struggling to bring in an income, they're in receipt of benefits, and they're coping with poor mental health as they work to business as usual in the midst of this crisis. And the most vulnerable in our society are breaking point too, with during lockdown heightened numbers of domestic abuse, relationship breakdown, and inevitably the consequences felt by the children witness to it. It's so important in such uncertain times that we just be compassionate to one another and remove the stereotypes against those who are in the court system and those who represent them. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the cards you hold or pick up along the way, none of this is a game. When I was called to the bar, it was Lord Chief Justice Declan Morgan, also of Derry descent, who spoke of barristers as being pillars within our community. We, as a community, are composed of the values that matter to us the most, and democracy and rule of law should be at the forefront of this. We do not forgo our clients for the sake of budget cuts. We never will. As always, it's the former President of the UK Supreme Court, Lady Hale, says it best. If we lose the possibility of the poorest and most vulnerable in our society protecting those rights, we are all lost. And the special thing about the bar, is the collegiality, no matter your year of call. Trust me, every day I'm reminded of this through hasty WhatsApps or calls far too late at night. As Justice McAlinden rightly observed, it's the consequence of barristers working in the same building, using the same facilities, and sharing the same ethos that enhances the expertise available to the public. Because regardless of the cards you hold, merit and hard work are what can make you more than deserving to enter the profession. I didn't come from a family of lawyers. My mum was the first generation to go to university and managed to raise 2 children whilst doing so, one of them being me. And I, for one, had to work 3 jobs at one point to fund my career at the bar. In the words of Lord Newburger, the law has a human face. It's administered and made by people. So my story isn't unique, but representation only truly happens if we reflect the society that we represent. I hope that if you can imagine the change you wish to see in your community, that you will strive to advocate for others as you should do for yourself. I'm so glad I did. Thank you.